Welcome back from Weather and Nature, and once again, thank you so much for keeping with us here on Uganda Broadcasting Corporation, where we inspire Uganda, but also ensure that every day we update you with what is happening globally and locally. And that is the reason you should be with us every weekday, because we ensure you're well versed with what is happening here and there. And all the breaking news in this morning show is our mandate, and you can rest assured that you kickstart your day an informed person when you make the right choice to start your day with us. Now, welcome back from Weather and Nature, and it is a time we look at our GMU agenda, that is Good Morning Uganda agenda. This morning, we are going to be looking at externalization of labor enhancing workers' rights. Well, we know as a country that we receive a lot of money from people working in countries outside Uganda, to be more specific, in the Middle East of late, where we've seen so many Ugandans leave this country to look for greener pastures. And as a country, really ripe a lot from these people, because as a country, annually we register about 1.4 billion US dollars every year coming in from people working in these areas. However, of late, we've seen a number of reports coming more so from Saudi Arabia, where many of the girls that go as domestic workers to work in this country, a number of reports are coming up of abuse of their rights. Some have returned either with body injuries, others have lost lives, and this is what we want to look into. Recently, about 2 weeks back, we saw Uganda government sending off the Minister for Labor and Social Development, that is Honorable Betty Amongi, to Saudi Arabia, then later Qatar, to understand the situation. What is going wrong when we thought we had perfected this art, and unfortunately now we are getting more of these cases. Joining me on set this morning is a man who has been in this industry for quite a long time, and happens to be the director of Enjazi Company Limited, that is in Uganda, Ashe Chitandwe. Mr. Chitandwe, you're most welcome to our studios this morning.
Thank you very much, Robert. Good morning, viewers.
Well, Ashe, to begin with, we know that this is a sector that has proved as rescue to many Ugandans. We know thousands of girls that have gone to the Middle East, more so in Saudi, where have a contract, worked, helped people at home. Some even set up other businesses. But we've equally seen, for the last, I think, 2 months now, media awash almost day by day with some of these reports of human rights abuse. Yet for about 4 years, these are tremendously reduced. What went wrong?
Right. Thank you, Robert, for that very good question. First of all, this is very, very unfortunate. And we, as the sector, if I can express our deepest concerns as well, as a sector, we feel abuse of rights of workers is a very big breach of the contract. Remember, Robert, we have a standard contract that was signed by the two governments, the government of Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the government of Uganda. So protecting rights of workers is one of the clauses that actually have to be followed. So anything that is the opposite of protecting rights is a very big abuse and breach. So what has happened? I've been following closely, of course, and what I can tell is that these are not very. If you look at the numbers we have over there and the incidents we've had, they are not so many. But also, it doesn't mean that it is okay. You know, to have every single Ugandan is important, and their rights have to be protected. So if we have one case, even if it's 1 in 10 years, it is very important that we follow it up to the very bottom of things. Yes, there was a very unfortunate incident of a lady who passed on. She worked in Saudi Arabia, and then as you followed as well, she died in Egypt. When we did our research and also, you know, following up our investigations, basically following up on that particular issue, we also found out that she had actually completed her contract in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Unfortunately, she decided to keep working for that particular sponsor, but in between there, like I've always said, Robert, once you're done with your contract, the law is very clear. You're supposed to return home, renew through the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, then go back and work. But once you complete your contract, and then you somehow go into an agreement with your sponsor, then that gives a very interesting situation, because that window, anything can happen. Remember now, the company in Uganda knows you're supposed to be back home. But also, you've had that extension between your own private arrangement with your sponsor. Now, that is very, very dangerous. And I think that's the reason why she ended up in Egypt, and no one knew, apart from her informing her family. That is a very, 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 very dangerous thing. So for us, what we emphasize, when you finish your contract, because that is the legal binding between the two companies. Have that done, come back home. If you want to go back, go through the right channels again, renew, and then go back. So
Ashe, this is where I want to fault you, the people, the Ugandan companies. I may not fault those in Saudi Arabia, because previously the problems we had that were where we saw social media awash with these bad, nasty pictures and all that, were that people were going through through traffickers. We've done. I want to thank government, and I want to thank you, the labor organizations. You've done enough publicity that now majority of the girls that go to Saudi Arabia, because that is the only country we have a bilateral, we have an agreement to export domestic workers. But now it's no longer the traffickers. The incidents we are getting of late are contracts that expire, because like you rightly said, if a contract is still going on, you and the sponsor and the Saudi government are monitoring this young girl in the house where she is. Now, most of the incidents, actually 99.9, are now happening after the contract has expired. With the system, we know the Musnet that monitors, with the supervisors that are required for every company to have in the country of destination. Why are you paying a deaf ear, knowing that legally, if a contract is done, this girl is supposed to come back home? She left Uganda through you. But what happens is the excuse we are getting now, her contract had ended. Did you take due diligence to ensure she comes back? Both Uganda government, you, the export company, and even the Saudi government as well.
Robert, admittedly, I'm in agreement with what you're saying, partly, because yes, it's incumbent upon us to ensure that when the contracts expire, we push actually the sponsors to make sure that these girls return. Yes, if some companies are already doing that, others, I know they're also attempting to do that. But I can also tell you that sometimes the candidates themselves are very stubborn, because once you inform them that yes, in a week's time or in 2 weeks' time your contract is expiring, we're following up on your repatriation back home, we're in touch with your sponsor, then the sponsor turns around and says, for example, but for me and this young lady, we've agreed, because I'm not ready to send her back home as yet, we've agreed that she gives me another 2 months. So that is where the problem.
So if the sponsor then agrees that me and this young lady, we've agreed for an extension of 2 months, then how does the company, well knowledgeable of this, lose touch? Because all these excuses that come in, I won't mention companies because we don't have them on set here. They will tell you they agreed with a sponsor for an extension of 5 months, of 3 months, and this is where hell broke loose. So being in the know, why don't you continue with the same powers that you had? Because to be honest, I want to thank many Ugandan companies. As long as the contract is still running, they have done their best to fight abuse of the rights of these girls. And I want to thank you. That is at least a few registered companies in just being in. I follow these cases so much with passion. But I feel, is it because now you're no longer having monetary benefits? Why leave this spell?
No, actually, Robert, you see this visit by the Minister of Gender, Labour and Social Development. it's one of the reasons she went to Saudi Arabia to see how best we can patch up all these gray areas so that we don't have these gaps. And one of the things that, excuse me, that we have to do is to continuously work with the embassy, because over there now the government is the embassy. So to see how best we can enforce this, because once there is a gap, anyone is going to take advantage of that. And secondly, for us as companies, our mandate stops at a certain level, and then the government has to pick up from there. For example, we cannot go and pick a girl from someone's home, but the embassy, because that is government, and the authorities in Saudi Arabia, they can enforce that through the framework that is in place. So for us, what we can do, the only thing we can do is to push and report to the Ministry of Labor in Saudi Arabia that we have a concern. Sponsor X has actually breached the contract in areas of one, the contract expired, he has refused to let the girl go home. Secondly, he's not meeting his obligations of buying high return ticket back to Uganda. Stuff like that. We can only report those cases. And then the embassy, together with the government or the Ministry of Labor in Saudi Arabia, follows up on that. So that is what we are focusing on. And that's why even the minister went to meet the authorities, her counterpart in Saudi Arabia, and also the embassy, to see how best we can patch up that gray area. Robert, thank you.
Just remind our viewers that later on you'll be part of the topic of discussion this morning by simply going to our social media platforms. That is our WhatsApp number, which is on your screen, 0709 60 25 92. 0709 60 25 92. And I'll be reading out all your questions to Ashe, and of course your observation on how best we can ensure that the rights of these young girls, because Uganda, we have companies that export, now being specific in the Middle East, the number of jobs, but where we've seen problems is in the area of exporting domestic workers, what usually they call housemates here in Uganda. And this is where the problem has come. Maybe because there are people in shelters 24/7, and many have had issues. However, there have been some improvements. But what remains to be done is no Ugandan migrant should go to the Middle East in any part where we have bilateral relations and have such issues, and this is what we want to iron out with Ashe. Now, Ashe,
you're right, Robert.
We want to look at mechanisms put in place to ensure protection of these workers.
Right.
After some of these scenes coming out, you find that many girls are now even scared.
Right.
So, what assurance, what legal frameworks are in place to ensure that these girls are safe?
Right. Robert, what I can tell you is that right now we have over 165,000 Ugandans in the Middle East specifically. And if you look at the percentage of the very unfortunate incidents we've had and the percentage of those ones that are doing okay, you realize that they vary, by a very big margin. But what I can tell you also is that the good thing is that these bilateral, these contracts were actually agreed upon. This particular contract, rather, it was actually agreed upon by the two nations, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Ugandan government. So whatever is in those contracts, both countries agreed. And that is what we follow as our constitution, if I may say. But also, that same contract, it has a few issues here and there that have to be improved. And that is why the minister went to discuss, to see how they can tighten up, put more. Of course, as you know, this labor sector, it is relatively young sector here in Uganda. And we are learning on job in many, many things. So that is why they are saying that, guess what? Since we have all these incidents coming up, how best can we tighten up this particular contract? So as we talk now, the technical committees from the two nations are already working to see what else they can do with the contract, the standard contract, to see that they tighten up, so that we don't have all these issues. That is what I can tell you. But also, for us as private companies, we've also gone ahead to have supervisors, to have managers to follow up on these girls. For example, if a girl raises an issue that I'm not well and my sponsor is not taking me to hospital, our supervisor in Saudi Arabia is supposed to follow up with the sponsor to make sure that this girl is taken to hospital. Secondly, if the girl raises an issue, I've not been paid my salary in the last 3 months, it is incumbent upon that particular manager to follow up on that issue, to see it through. So stuff like that is what, for us as private companies, have been able to do. And what we can do is, if the sponsor is not responsive, then we make our report to the Ministry of Labor in Saudi Arabia. Then the ministry, of course, will summon them and then follow up and pick it up from there. That's what we are doing. But the issue, of course, there is an issue of training that was raised recently. Maybe they also need to be trained more. Because I think since the assessment wasn't properly maybe implemented, you realize that some of them may not have a lot of experience. So the government is also coming up, I think they're coming up with a new way of training them to ensure that they are ready for the job. But for us, I'm giving an example of Njazi. This has been very, very effective. Very, very effective. Because for us, we have a manager and 5 more people as supervisors. So when there is an alarm somewhere, we quickly pick it up. If it needs Ministry of Labor in Saudi, we report it and we work with the embassy as well. And this has really helped us. But also, Robert, I can tell you, personally, last year, I repatriated over 45 Ugandans. One, some of them lost interest in the job, and I had to make sure that they come back home. Others, different reasons, and they're all here. So if we work with the embassy, work with government, and also the Ministry of Labor in Saudi Arabia, then we are able to make sure that we enforce some of these things. Yeah.
One thing comes out clear here
Right.
in your explanation.
Right.
First is requirements of competent supervisors.
Right.
Because in the revised laws that I think were issued last year,
Yes.
The Minister of Labour, Gender and Social Development came up clearly and said every labour export company must have supervisors.
Right.
Here we are talking about Saudi Arabia because, dear lovely viewers, Uganda only has bilateral agreements with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia when it comes to domestic workers. So you go to any other country, you're on your own.
Right.
For domestic workers, they should only go to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. I once had with the Kingdom of Jordan that I should talk about it. Qatar, I think we are also trying to see how best we can have them. But if you're elsewhere, please make things right. Otherwise, you're on your own, and in case of any problems, it could be hard for you to be helped. Now, Ashe, how fluent, how equipped? Because one time I was following up a case.
Right.
And this family, they could only speak Arabic.
Right.
I'm speaking English.
Right.
So the supervisor, there you find that they may not be of any helps. And even knowing these are new countries, how to move through, how to handle issues here and there. So how do you go about it?
Right. Robert, actually, contrary to that, the prerequisite for you to become a supervisor is to be able to speak Arabic. And that is what we are doing. You should be able to speak Arabic because that is the only language most of them speak. But if you can't speak Arabic, then you don't qualify to be a supervisor. And also, you may not be able to really articulate these issues to one, the Ministry of Labor, two, to the sponsor. So that is a prerequisite, and that has played a very big role. For example, these 6 people I've told you that I have at Njazi. The manager speaks Arabic, and the rest of them as well, they speak Arabic as well. So that is a prerequisite. It has to be like that. Otherwise, it loses meaning. Yes, right.
Let's again now look at a very interesting area where we are seeing abuse of rights is understanding these contracts.
Right.
We know we have pre-departure training here in Uganda for these domestic workers. Previously it was about 7 weeks. Now I think it's 14 weeks.
Yes.
But one of the things we find is some of these girls, the reports we get as abuse of human rights is one, loss of interest. Two, is they seem not to understand the task ahead of them.
Right.
So a girl will be all over social media, I want to go back home, I want to go back home. Recently I witnessed a case where this young lady left, she left a kid home with her grandmother. The grandmother was admitted, the child was on oxygen, and she wanted to come back home. But we had to tell her that your contract does not enable you to go back home. In this pre-departure department, how do we go into this to ensure that people know what they're going in for, the soft and the hard in it?
Thank you very much for that question, Robert. Truth of the matter is that, yes, there were gaps in this training, and that is why the ministry, after they did their review, they realized that 7 days, because initially it was 7 days, so it was extended to 14 days to fully ensure that these people, our people rather, fully understand what they're getting into. And the beautiful thing, Robert, it's a very interesting situation that you can always pull out. If you finish the training and what you've seen or what you've heard and what you've gone through training, you realize that it's not for you. You can always drop out at that particular stage. But also, yes, we're now emphasizing training to ensure that, of course, we are doing it, but 7 days, as the government reviewed, were very few days. So now 14 days, we feel that should answer some of the things. And secondly, Robert, you can't force someone to work. I've given you my own example. I've brought very many back home. They've lost interest to work.
But also, Asher, that is another uphill task.
Right.
Because many have tried to assist to come back home.
Right.
You're told you have to pay some of the money that the sponsor, I think, paid. There are bills to meet. Now, most of these girls may go from underprivileged families.
Right.
And telling them to raise some amount of money to have their daughter back because she has lost interest also becomes an impossibility to some extent.
Right. Actually, Robert, I'm not going to talk for everyone, but what I can tell is that on humanitarian grounds, for me as in Jersey, I do not ask for money. If someone has lost interest, let them come back home.
But then you have to replace that candidate.
Yes.
So on whose bill does this, being honest?
On my own bill, unfortunately, but what do you do? This is a Ugandan who has lost interest in the job. You can't force them to work. What do you do, Robert? We are human beings. What you do, you touch your pocket, get her back home, and you forget about it. It's as simple as that. Because once you keep them there, you know the repercussions. If she loses her life, for example, then how do you explain to the family? And yet you had a window, of just touching your pocket. Yes, it's expensive, and yes, we have to replace. Yeah, it's very, very costly, but this is a human being. Well, Robert, the most important thing is having a healthy and an alive human being, right? So return them home and just forget about that. So for me, that's what I've done.
Well, I would prefer you invest more time in ensuring these people understand these contracts. If it means even having interpreters in the various languages, do that for them. Let's do that. Well, it's time now to look at some of the messages that are coming in. Government should put up stringent measures to curb the vice of removing human organs. Well, we've had some reports coming in, some allegations of bodies that were returned, missing parts, some claiming here and there, I have a scar, I never went with this, and Ashe, let's deal with this.
Right. On the issue of body organs, to be honest with you, Robert, I'm also just reading this in the media just like you do. And the two incidents, I don't want to comment on them because the police is already doing its investigations, and that at the right time, the police, together with the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, they will come and make a statement on that. Just like how the minister promised, next week, I think this week, she'll come up and talk to the public about that. But for me, as the CEO of Jersey, I've not experienced this in my own company, and I've deployed very many Ugandans, but this has never happened. So that is what I can say, Robert.
Well, reading in more of these messages, please keep them coming and give me your name. Kindly give us your name. This is Siraji Lukwago. Whereas countries like Philippines, Nigeria went into agreement with EU, with UAE and other countries importing Philippines and Nigeria as laborers were, but they set up conditions and regulations to be followed by the United Arab Emirates. Uganda government failed to do so. The reason Ugandans are being exploited to that extent may come back dead or without some of the organs. Government officials are the ones owing recruitment companies. Well, he says that our brothers from the Philippines, Nigeria, are exploring, also carrying out the same thing. Actually, Philippines have been there for a very long time.
Right.
But according to him, they do have some such issues.
Right. No, actually, contrary to that, these issues can happen anywhere. But what I can also add is that yes, the government is committed in ensuring that this sector thrives. But also, any of these issues that are being raised right now, like I've said, the government is already in the review. The technical committees are already working together between the two nations to see how they can best improve. The Philippines, they've been, for example, in Saudi Arabia for the last 40 years. So you can't compare the Philippines to Uganda. For us, we've only been there for how many years? About 7? So, you know, you can't compare the two. We're learning on job, like I said. And I want to appeal to Ugandans to actually support this particular sector and also support what the sector has been able to do for very many Ugandans. But also, let us be very, very careful with the words we throw, because these governments, all these countries actually pick up on these issues. So we need to post information with evidence. And that is why I was telling you, Robert, that particular issue of organs, we're all waiting for the police to pronounce itself on that.
Well, relatedly, good morning, Uganda. Thanks for the discussion, which is timely given the plight of externalization of labor. Does the Ministry of Labor, Gender and Social Development have data of all Ugandans in the Middle East? How are they tracked to ensure their well-being?
Right.
Okay, can you help someone to get... this is not what we are looking at. Then still, good morning, UBC. I would like the CEO to tell the truth. Those girls are really treated badly. I'm watching. Well, I didn't get the name of that person. Then, hi, good morning, thanks for the show. I'm Maroba Chris. I have my passport. Where can I get a company that is faithful so that I can travel confidently? Well, then I have this one. Good morning, presenter. Slaves have no rights in the Arab world, so that gentlemen shouldn't be given a platform to lie to, to desperate Ugandans. What they are doing is pure modern day slavery. For now, we go with those.
Right, Robert. Some of the things I'm not going to respond because they are clearly out of context. But what I can tell you is that we have an instrument that was passed by Parliament, first of all, in 2005, and it has been reviewed in 2021. So we are not doing anything outside the law. Externalization of labor is a government program that was opened for Ugandans to go and find employment. But also, we all know that even back in the day, people used to go to Dubai. When I was growing up, I remember, people used to go to Dubai. And that was illegal migration, actually. People go to visit for 3 months, then they stay on. They spend years, and then they have to actually come back. So for me, I don't want to divulge into other things, but what I can tell is that we are following what the government has put in place, the framework they've put in place, the regulations they've put in place, and that's what we're following to execute what we're supposed to do. Yes, I admit there are mistakes, there are weaknesses here and there, but I know there is commitment to ensure that this improves. Secondly, about the modern day slavery, that one surely no country in this age basically can allow that. You know, you can't send your people into slavery. So for me, that is my comment.
Well, we have one from Ojilongo Christine. This is from our YouTube channel. Thank you so much for the message. It says, what we want is salary increment, day off, and our phones to be kept by ourselves. The way I suffered coming back to Uganda. Ojilongo Christine still says, keep an eye on Saudi Arabia. She says, let the military train these girls for the job because we deal with animals, not human beings. Well, others are a bit out of context. I won't read them because of the language. But he talks of salary increment, day off, and keep having their phones with them.
Right, Robert. And those are, you see now she has mentioned genuine concerns. And those are the concerns we've already put to our partners. And that's what the ministry is trying to follow up with his counterparts in Saudi to see that their rights are respected, honestly. Because what do? You know, you have to ensure that Ugandans work in good conditions, because these jobs are offered by these two governments. So we have to ensure that they work in good conditions. Thank you, Ronald.
Well, there's a question here, or a message. It says removal of kafala system. Since it places a heavy burden on sponsors, whereby they are responsible for the action of the immigrant workers they employ, forcing them to treat them as slaves. Then we have all commodities. I doubt anything will change with that system still in place in those countries. Mariam, kafala system.
Well, Robert, that is a bit, what I can tell you is this, Robert. No government can allow its people to be enslaved. That's what I can tell you. Yes.
Okay. Well, more messages coming in. This is Oscar Simbwa. These people are going in diaspora to make money and bring it home to change their lives, so that government should have stable contracts with these countries to solve such issues towards labor export. Still, another one coming in here, and he says, thank you, UBC, for the program. It's a very good program. I'm enjoying myself. That is Doreen. Well, Doreen didn't get your other name. Then thanks for the show. I'm Ramadan from Natete. We appreciate your efforts. Guys, thank you so much, and thank you for updating us. We are watching from Natete. So many questions are related to the issue of organs, which you said we can only wait for the official statement from the ministry, and of course that will clear more the air of this issue of organs being removed. But Ashe, still as we move on, as we look at some of the questions, there's also another area that we want to understand very well. These contracts last for 2 years. We have had girls take about 4 years. Still, and they say they're working in the same family. That you explained. But what is the clear procedure of a Ugandan who has completed their work as a domestic worker to return home? Some will tell you the sponsor, the one you call sponsor. For me, I think this is a person employing this girl, has to facilitate a ticket. Others will tell you, no, I must have saved to come back home. So what is clear? So that parents, the girls that are coming, know that maybe on day one of my contract expiring, the next day I must be on plane.
Robert, first of all, it's clearly indicated or stipulated in the contract that when you've done your 2 years, you're supposed to come back home. If you want to stay on, or if you want to continue working, you have to first come back home. The government, through of course the Ministry of Labor, they renew, you renew your contract with your sponsor, but also get clearance from the Ministry of Labor, then go. But also you're supposed to be here for 30 days to rest. For 30 days, that's a full month to rest. As they process on your documents, then you return. Then secondly, once your contract has expired, come back home. If the sponsor is not ready, it is incumbent upon us as a company to work with the sponsor and ensure that at a given period, because sometimes, of course, we get issues like, unfortunately, I'm not doing well financially at the moment, can you give me 2 weeks? It is incumbent upon us to follow up on that. But in many cases, for us, what we've been able to do is that sometimes when that happens, you ask them, okay, thank you very much, the contract has expired, you bring the girl to our accommodation as we wait for the 2 weeks for you to acquire, the money you need and stuff like that. So that is what's supposed to be done. Secondly, Ugandans should desist from trying to go into private arrangements with their sponsors, because once you do that, it's very dangerous. You are at their match, basically. I may say that. So finish, come home. If you want to go back, go through proper channels. Then you go back. Secondly, those ones that say that they have to pay for themselves, either one, if you finish the contract and the contract is saying that, the sponsor is saying that, it means maybe one, they're trying to play stubborn. Two, they're trying to avoid that to happen. But it's very simple. Have the girl, have the sponsor bring the girl back to our office, because our offices have accommodation. Then process. Then the girl can come home. It's as simple as that. Yeah.
Ashe, as an advocate of human rights, even the selection of words matters so much. That is why we call person with disabilities, not disabled persons. Now, in the all of our conversation this morning, you're using the word sponsor. To me, a sponsor is a person who helps you. Is helping you. These girls go to work for these people. Why do we use this word sponsor? Does it make them feel like these are commodities they have acquired? Why do you use this selection of words? I find it not very friendly.
True. I'm using exactly the words that are in the contract that was signed by the two nations. Those are the words I'm using, and that is what is stipulated in these contracts, Robert. Yes, please.
Okay, well, let me read one more message here from our YouTube channel. He says, Kasim Karunji, the only problem I see is the agencies who take these girls. Really, you need to put an eye on them. Some are just making money. Some are just making money. Thank you so much. Then we have one. Good morning, UBC. Please, I want a recap. Okay, well, this is off topic this morning. Then can I have the WhatsApp number for the CEO in Jersey? Well, that is one requiring. Then thanks, Robert, for this important topic. Why immediately these girls reach to their sponsor in Saudi Arabia and they disarm them of their passports?
That is illegal. Even the contract stipulates that it's illegal. When that happens, please report to your company or to your team in Saudi Arabia, and they follow up on that. It is wrong. It's not supposed to be done. Yes.
Well, in the interest of time, I want to thank you so much, people, for your messages. But just to look at our SMS messages briefly, and I'll go straight to this one. Uganda has just entered the externalization of labor market. I feel 2 weeks is not enough to prepare this girl for the work. The girl always breached the contracts and tried to seek alternative employment due to poor pay. That is one observation there. He says 2 weeks are not enough for training. Then, oh, please, I can only read those in English. Well, another one says, thank you, Ashe, for the insight into this, but there's so much that still has to be done to improve labor externalization in Uganda and protect the lives of these girls. Ashe, we must come to the end of this in the interest of time, but I would like to have your final remarks to the girls and, of course, the families, so that we properly uphold the rights of these people.
Ugandans, I want to appeal to you and also urge you to work together with the government, the Ministry of Gender and Labor and Social, Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development, and also work with the companies. Robert, these are Ugandan companies and they're owned by Ugandans. If you've been able to give company X your daughter to go and work, you should be able to trust your company and you should work together. For us, for example, when you're doing debriefing, we invite the parents and we sensitize them on these contracts to fully understand. If they feel there is anything in that contract that is not right, then they're allowed to drop out at that particular stage. But also, let us not be quick to make judgment. Let us take our time, study the situation well. Like I've told you, Robert, there are very many Ugandans who have benefited from this particular labor externalization. But unfortunately, the good stories don't normally come out. You know, that's the most unfortunate thing. But even the challenges we are having, let us work together and we fix them. There is nothing like, you know, person X, all he wants to do is to benefit, but they're not willing to, one, ensure that Ugandans work in good conditions. Secondly, let us all coordinate, even the team in Saudi, work together, see how best we can, help Ugandans to work in good conditions so that they are productive. That is what I can say. But also finally, I want to urge Ugandans to still go through registered companies, because once you get challenges, then we can attach your situation to a particular company. And that means that particular company is answerable to the government and all the authorities here. But once you go on your own, then it becomes very difficult to receive help. That is what I can say. And secondly, let's keep safe because COVID kills. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Ache Shitandwe, and of course you, our lovely viewers. Thank you so much for sending in the messages. Really enjoy this feedback, and wherever you are, thank you for watching. Very interesting here is we must protect the lives of these young girls that go out to seek greener pastures, because at the end of the day, there's so much that they send home for national development, not only to their families, but importantly, there must be a way that when these contracts come to an end, government of Saudi Arabia, government of Uganda, and these companies ensure these girls come home, and if they're to leave the country again, they go through proper channels for effective monitoring and fighting any device that is abusive to their human rights. I'll leave you with Ruben. He's ready to take you through the world of sports. Have a lovely day. God bless you. Stay safe.
Pick of the day on UBC, brought to you by
how to get points